feelings, and then the minute someone like Jeff Norcott, working class bloke that's done good, starts talking about his feelings, starts talking about what affects men, he's immediately shut down. And immediately the conversation becomes around, rape and the gender pay gap and how much laundry women have to do. Do I think Lawrence Fox said the right thing? No, I don't. I've told him that I don't. And Lawrence is my friend, and I like Lawrence, and I care about Lawrence. And no, I don't think he did or said the right thing. However, let's not pretend that Ava is some sort of like Mother Teresa here. She talks about being shagged and shagging, and I won't shag you non-stop. And this argument of misogyny seems to be coming from exactly the same women that for a long, long time have been saying that trans women can be women, that men can just identify as women, that any women that complains about being scared or upset or frustrated with men claiming to be women are all TERFs and they're all evil and they deserve to be killed and raped and murdered and everything else. These are the same women that think that male rapists should be in women's prisons. Don't come at me as a feminist like I have no idea what I'm talking about. There's not a decade in my entire life that I have gone without being either raped or beaten or abused or violently assaulted or coerced or abused by a man. So to think that I'm some sort of repressed, oppressed, self-hating woman is absolutely insane. But suicide doesn't affect these abusive men. It doesn't. It's not the abusive men. It's not the rapists. It's not the sexual abusers or the coercive abusers or the narcissists or the gaslighters that are going around killing themselves. It's our good men. It's our good men in society that feel totally and utterly disenfranchised by society and just don't know how to meander through the world. Here's some statistics for you. For men aged 40 to 50 years, the rates of suicide were in disabled people, those who have never worked or in a long-term employment or are single or have never been married or been in a civil partnership. Ethnicity-wise, rates of suicide were highest in the white ethnic groups for both men and women. People who were reported to belonging to any religious group generally had lower rates of suicide compared with those who reported no religion. However, rates were higher in Buddhists and other religious groups. Disabled men had higher rates of dying by suicide than non-disabled men. The criticism from people like Dr. Charlotte Proudman, who I actually really admire. I really like Dr. Charlotte Proudman. She's done a huge amount for women and girls throughout her career. But she is constantly aligning this whole Tate conversation, Fox conversation with Tate. The thing is, why do we think that our young men are turning to people like Tate? We need to address our place in that conversation, women. We do, because for the last 10 years, all young men, especially young straight white men, all they have seen is every single one of their heroes being totally decimated by Hollywood, TV. The only time men appear in adverts, straight men, especially straight white men, appear in TV or adverts is they're bumbling idiots or they're psychopaths or they're absolute horrible people, they're abusers. All of their heroes have been removed, from James Bond, Captain America, Luke Skywalker. All of their male heroes have been totally replaced by women. And then at the same time, we're telling men that they, need to find better heroes. If you remove all of their heroes, all of the good, upstanding men that do good things, that will fight for the underdog and fight for women, fight for Princess Leia. If you remove all of them and if you constantly tell them that they're toxic and they're evil and their natural male traits to want to do things and progress and get on with life, if you constantly tell them that those things are wrong, who do you think they're going to turn to? They can't even have a Gillette advert, a literal advert for shaving your beard without a woman looking like a man who's better at being a man than they are. And then you have people like Ava constantly talking on every single platform. She's the acceptable Andrew Tate of the women's world. She's an extremist. She's a misandrist. She thinks that young men should live in fear of the accusation of rape. She says some absolutely atrocious things, but because she's young and she's absolutely beautiful and she's very left-wing and she's ticking all the right boxes, everybody's okay with her. She's no better than Tate. There has to be some middle ground where we can all start having conversations. You know, if you talk, for example, about grooming gangs, the first thing the left says is, well, it's not all Muslims. And that's absolutely right. It isn't all Muslims. It's a very, very tiny percentage of Pakistani Muslims that are involved in grooming gangs. And it's absolutely right not to judge an entire group of people by a small amount of people. But then the second that we start talking about male suicide and how many of our young men are murdered, oh, well, all of a sudden, every single man in the UK, especially if he's white and he's working class, then he must be a rapist. What was interesting to me this week is this conversation about how many times men think about the Roman Empire in a day, and it became an enormous amount. Some men were thinking about the Roman Empire 2 or 3, 4 times a day, and the women were shocked by this, and they were all filming their partners. It's like, why do you all think about the Roman Empire so much? Because that's how men's brains are built. That's why there's a 15% pay gap, because men are different to women. They can wear lipstick, they can do what they want, but biologically, genetically, in their brains, in every way, men are absolutely totally different to females. And those qualities in men should be celebrated and not always pissed on. And the reason men think about the Roman Empire all the time is because naturally, in order to survive, men have to look at what has happened before. Can they learn lessons from it? How can I apply that information to the future? So the reason so many men are CEOs of FTSE 100 companies is because they do think about the Roman Empire. They do think, how can I utilize who I am as a man? How can I get the best out of my team? How can I get my men to fight for me? Whether it's the Roman Empire or Sun Tzu or Marcus Aurelius or any of those people, the reason those men were so successful is because they thought that way. And that's why Boadicea was so successful too, because she thought like a man. You know, she decided how she was going to collate an army of people that thought the same as her and organise them and fight the Roman Empire. So rather than constantly castigating men, every single man that steps a foot wrong, every single male that might not do or say the right thing, let's be really honest, because these aren't the most dangerous men in society. So what if Lawrence Fox bloody said massively inappropriate things? Of course he did. You know, he did. And I'm not going to defend what he said. I've told him what I think about what he said. And he knows what he said was probably totally out of order. I expect he probably does want to shag Ava Santina. But that's beside the point. The point is that, you know, you cannot sack people and shut down an entire system. The point is that the point of all of this is male suicide. And that subject, which is really important, that is killing more of our good men that matter, than anything else in the UK. It's killing more men than testicular cancer, prostate cancer, smoking, drugs, alcohol, everything. More men die from suicide than any other thing in the UK. And it's the good men that it's killing. And we really need to stay on subject. And we can't deflect to things that just don't really matter. These arguments that are happening in the upper middle class sphere of like political correctness, they don't really matter morning, noon and night in the working class towns and villages. Nobody really gives a shit. What we give a shit about is when we come home and our young man have just hung himself, because they don't give any signs. They don't talk about it. I've had friends that have killed themselves, and you'd think that literally the day before they'd posted a photograph of how wonderful their lives were on Facebook. You wouldn't have had a clue. You would not have had a clue. And then they did it, because that's what the real suicidal men, that's what they do. They pretend everything is okay and they don't talk. And then they just take themselves off in a quiet moment, and then they're gone and we've lost them forever. We think, why didn't they tell us? Because when they try to tell us, we don't listen. And that's the truth. And we need to start listening, or we're going to keep losing more of our boys and men.